It was supposed to be just another ordinary morning for Vincent Hail, a man who had everything most people only dreamed of. His name carried weight in every boardroom. His business empire stretched across continents, and his every move was planned with ruthless precision. But destiny doesn't always send invitations before it changes your life. That morning, as Vincent's sleek black car glided down the outskirts of the city, the air around him began to change. The roads grew narrower, the buildings disappeared, and soon the only thing that surrounded him was silence and decay. His assistant had insisted on inspecting a newly acquired factory near the city's edge, an area Vincent himself had never visited. He lowered his tinted window halfway, frowning as a foul stench crept inside. The driver murmured an apology, but before Vincent could order him to drive faster, something caught his eye. There, amid the endless mounds of garbage and smoke, sat a woman in a torn blue uniform, clutching a small, shivering boy. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt, her eyes red and swollen from crying. The sight was so unexpected that for a moment, Vincent wondered if his mind was playing tricks on him. But then she turned slightly, and his heart stopped. That face, he knew that face. Maria, he whispered to himself. It couldn't be. Yet it was. Maria, the quiet, polite maid who had once worked in his mansion, who served his family breakfast every morning with a soft smile and gentle hands, now sitting in a landfill, holding a starving child. Before the driver could react, Vincent opened the door and stepped out, the wind slapping against his coat. His polished shoes sank into the dirt as he made his way down the slope, calling out, "Maria." She looked up suddenly, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. The boy buried his face in her chest, crying harder. Maria tried to stand, but her legs trembled and gave out beneath her. Vincent rushed to her side, kneeling on the filthy ground without a second thought. The billionaire who commanded thousands of employees, who dined with presidents, now sat in the dirt, face to face with a woman who had once quietly served him. Her hands were bleeding, her clothes ripped, and her child's lips were cracked from thirst. When their eyes met, silence filled the air, heavy, raw, unforgettable. She whispered weakly, "Sir, please, don't look at me like this." Her voice was shaking, not from shame but from exhaustion. Vincent didn't answer. He simply took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. At the hospital that day, as doctors worked on Maria and her son, Vincent learned the truth, piece by painful piece. Maria's husband had died suddenly a few months ago, leaving behind crushing debts. To survive, she had borrowed money from a ruthless lender. When she couldn't repay on time, he began threatening her. She was thrown out of her apartment, with nowhere to go and a child to feed. She had tried reaching the agency that employed her, the same agency that had assigned her to Vincent's mansion, but they refused to help, saying she had already been replaced. So she wandered, desperate, until hunger drove her to the landfill, searching for food scraps for her son. Vincent sat quietly, listening, his heart heavy with guilt. He had built towers that touched the sky, but he hadn't noticed the fall of someone who once stood quietly beside him. All his wealth, his luxury, his endless success, none of it mattered in that moment. What mattered was the frail woman in that hospital bed, and the small boy who held her hand as if she were the only thing keeping him alive. For the next few days, Vincent stayed close. He visited Maria and Theo, her son, every morning. He brought food, toys, clothes, and most of all, warmth. The boy began smiling again, shyly reaching for Vincent's hand every time he entered the room. Maria, however, could barely meet his eyes. She kept apologizing for being a burden. But Vincent only shook his head and told her softly, "The only burden here is my ignorance." That night, standing by the hospital window, watching the city lights flicker below, Vincent felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. For so long, he had measured his worth in numbers, deals, and profits. But what did all of it mean if a single human being in his care could fall into darkness without anyone noticing? When Maria and Theo finally recovered, Vincent didn't just hand them money or a home, he gave them purpose. He established a foundation in her name, the Maria Hope Trust, dedicated to helping domestic workers who faced abuse, debt, or homelessness. He funded shelters, schools, and clinics. Maria, still hesitant but deeply moved, agreed to help manage it. Slowly, she found her strength again. Months later, on a bright afternoon, little Theo walked into Vincent's office holding a piece of paper. It was a crayon drawing, a stick figure version of Vincent, Maria, and Theo standing together under a shining sun. With the words written in shaky letters, "Thank you for finding us." Vincent stared at the drawing for a long time, tears quietly filling his eyes. In that moment, he understood this was the real meaning of success. Not wealth, not fame, but humanity. That day, he realized he hadn't just found Maria and Theo, he had found himself. Years later, his mansion, once cold and silent, became a place of laughter and love. Maria no longer worked as a maid, but as the head of the foundation, helping countless others rise again. And whenever people asked Vincent why he had changed, why he dedicated so much of his life to helping others, he would simply smile and say, "Because one day, I found someone in a place no human being should ever be. And that day, I found my heart again." And as the camera fades, you see them standing together in the garden, Maria, Theo, and Vincent, sunlight washing over them as laughter fills the air. Because sometimes, the richest people in the world are those who learn how to care.